No.
Get out.
Just shut your pie hole for a second.
All right.
Anyway. What's architecture really about? Archispeak is the show that dares to peek under the architectural kimono, exposing what architecture really is, what it is that architects really do, and show you why we're passionate about our chosen profession. I'm Cormac Phelan. Join Evan Troxel, Neil Pan, and me as we have a casual conversation about all things architecture, which includes all the stuff people don't talk about. Think you already know what architecture is really about? Tune in and find out. It's time for some Archispeak.
So welcome to episode 22 of the Archispeak Podcast. I'm Neil Pan.
I'm Evan Troxel.
And I'm Cormac Phelan.
And this week we have some friends of the show to announce. So thank you very much for pitching in.
Yeah, so this week we had a $20 donation from Oscar Morales. So thanks very much, Oscar, for that donation. We really appreciate it. And the other donation this week, number 2, was from Bob Borson, $5. And thanks, Bob Borson. You can find Bob on Twitter at Bob Borson. Anybody heard of him?
Who?
Bob Borson.
I don't know.
It sounds familiar.
Lifeofanarchitect.com. All right. So thanks, everybody, for being a friend of the show. And you can become a friend of the show, which helps support and keep the podcast going at archispeakpodcast.com/donate. And we appreciate every donation. If you donate $5, you get your name read on the show. And we'd love to read your name. So go there and sign up. Thanks.
And with that, we're going to talk about, we're probably going to go off topic, but we're going to start with what makes a good sketchbook.
The mechanics of a sketchbook.
The mechanics of a sketchbook. I like that better.
All right, Cormac, you're the sketcher. You start.
Wait.
You're Mr. Moleskine.
I do appreciate it. Well, I want to hear what our listeners have to say about this. How do you pronounce the quintessential architectural sketchbook that everybody seems to carry around, their little black... I've heard it pronounced Moleskine, so I pronounce it that way, and everybody looks at me like I've grown a second head.
No, you just have one of those fancy mustaches, that's all.
You know what? I wish I did.
Yeah. It's November.
It is. I've just got my standard, all year round
5 o'clock shadow.
Yeah. Close crop beard.
George Michael. Yeah. All right. So what is it? Is it moleskin? Is it Moleskine?
Is it Moleskine? Is it moleskin? Is it
what else? I've never heard of anything else.
Yeah.
Well, what are we going to call it?
I think
we're going to call it moleskin, right?
Let's just call it moleskin.
All right.
Just so everybody knows the point of reference of what we're talking about. Because if I say it, then of course everybody will be looking at me like I have 2 heads.
It's a good thing it's not a video podcast.
Exactly. We say that often, and everybody should really honestly thank their lucky stars that it really isn't.
Yeah, you better appreciate.
Because Neil doesn't wear pants.
You wouldn't be able to see that with my video anyway.
Whoa,
I am sitting down, so you're lucky.
But we've talked a lot about sketching, the need to sketch, the reasons why we sketch, the craft and skill that we believe should continue on about sketching. But
I would even go as far to say as we've inspired some people to pick up the pencil or the pen once again and start sketching.
Absolutely,
we got some good feedback from those talks.
But what we haven't talked about is the actual sketchbook itself.
The tools.
It is, a good sketchbook is as important as any, the actual art of sketching begins with the art of the sketchbook.
I totally agree.
So let's dive in.
It's the utmost importance, but
it's
up there.
It's all about image, man.
and there may be the crux of the talk.
Yeah. But I mean, I've got a small addiction to the Moleskine sketchbook. I've probably crack a new one open at least once every 2 months, and have an ever-growing stack. My wife looks at me every time I'm in the bookstore looking at one, or the art store and I'm looking at one, or I spend a good half an hour looking at different sketchbooks. I'm like, I like this paper. This paper, and then I test out how the pen bleeds through the paper or doesn't bleed through the paper, and this, that, and the other. So I think there's a lot of things that we can talk about on both the mechanics, as Evan, you were talking about, the mechanics of the actual sketchbook itself, and the tools that we use in the to create the sketches. So,
well, yeah, I think that there's a few topics we're going to want to hit on here. We're going to talk about paper quality, size of paper, the binding, the orientation. I mean, there's a bunch of things that go into a sketchbook, right? That no one in the world pays attention to, except for the lonely few that are listening right now. Well, if you just do a search on Amazon, for sketchbook, you get 152,715 results.
I will say,
crazy.
The people who pay attention to the binding of a sketchbook the most, Neil, you can support me on this one, left-handed people.
Oh, interesting.
We have...
Don't get me started on that.
I will say that, honestly, as a lefty, and who is constantly cleaning, pencil off of the side of his hand and everything else, left-handed people in sketchbooks, it's the bane of our existence, because the way that it's bound is never the way that a person draws. I move my sketchbook around. I don't just keep it static. Uh-huh. So I kind of, work from all directions of the sketchbook. And so at least 50% of my sketch, the binding is in the wrong place because it's, in my hand. Whether it's... And that's one of the reasons why, me personally, I completely stay away from spiral-bound sketchbooks. Hate them. Hate them with a passion.
Yeah, see, my attraction to spiral-bound notebooks, and this is... I was kind of... before the show, I was admitting to using my first Moleskine notebook right now, right in the middle of it. And it's not spiral bound, obviously. But, I want a sketchbook that lays flat. And so that's kind of what I am attracted to about a spiral bound notebook and I'm not left-handed, so maybe it makes all the difference for me. But what I found with sketchbooks that I had all through school, and I never spent a lot of time looking for the right sketchbook back then. I would just buy whatever was at the store when I needed it. But it was always a rigid bound spine, and it was always a pain in the butt to get a nice flat, or even to fold the back around. I really liked that, so that I could work with only, half of the size of the sketchbook if I needed to.
Well, and that's actually the problem with a lot of sketchbooks. Say, because, especially if you carry a portable sketchbook, like the Moleskine, and you carry the 5-inch sketchbook, and you want to draw, on both pages and all that other stuff, so you're drawing through the spine, and things that don't lie flat, you kind of get a skip in your sketch and all this other stuff, and it just, to me, it kind of annoys me that, I can't get that constant line, keep going straight across. And that's actually one of the things that I don't like about spiral bind, because if I do use the entire, both pages in kind of landscape form or whatever, you don't get that continuity of the sketch because it's broken up by the binding. In that, that's when I'm kind of drawing the, using both pages of a fully opened up sketchbook. Other than just, I will agree with you. I like that, on spiral, when you do have a spiral bound sketchbook and you're just using a single page and it lays flat and you can draw on it and kind of move it around and, it lays flat, and that's good.
Yeah, I mean, and if you need to fold the back around because the pages are flopping in the wind, you're out on the site. I like the flexibility of a spiral bound notebook. But with the moleskin, I haven't had the problem either. I mean, the spine is flexible enough that it doesn't matter.
And the good thing is that what that particular sketchbook does is, rather than doing like standard binding of, like, say, a book or a lot of sketchbooks that I have, they essentially bind them as individual sheets. This, they actually clump them together in one sheet that is the width of the entire open book, and they'll have like maybe 8 to 10 pages or 5 pages that are folded together. And so then they so they lay flat, and don't have your standard kind of book, but like bow in the page. And that's the great thing about that particular sketchbook. And in similar other books out there that do that, they, basically every 10 pages is almost like an individual set of pages that you could, if you wanted to, pull out of there.
Right.
You don't really want to, but, it makes the sketchbook a lot better, and it lays flat, and it's a lot more comfortable book to sketch in.
Yeah. I encourage my kids, they all have sketchbooks because if we just use single sheets of paper, they get strewn all over the house. But I encourage them. They always want to rip the pages out to tape them up on the wall or whatever. But I encourage them to keep them in there so they can always go back and see what they've drawn before and see how they've progressed through sketching. And I think it's a cool thing to be able to go back through a library of sketchbooks. And if you can. That's a really cool thing about sketchbooks, is it becomes this collection, this anthology of sketches that you have on your shelf, and it's a fun thing for my kids to go through my sketchbooks and see what I've drawn, and it's fun to go through theirs and see what they've drawn too. And so that's something I'm always encouraging them. And I was going to bring it up. I said, what do you guys think about just sketching on sheets of paper? One of my favorite people who comes into the office sketches on just 8.5 by 11 blank sheets of paper. He just sits, every time he sits down in front of you, he's got a little stack of paper that he draws on, because he's probably going to leave them with you, first of all. I mean, so that's one reason he's not sketching his sketchbook. But I always thought that was kind of interesting that he didn't have them in a collection, a sketchbook kind of a thing. But it seems to make also a lot of sense, because you can ultimately do anything with those.
Yeah, I mean, as the guy who sketches on practically any sheet of paper that you put in front of me, I mean, I've posted pictures where I'll like sketch on napkins, I sketch on Post-it notes, I sketch on literally anything, on meeting minutes.
Yeah.
If there's like a little blank, little piece of white in a meeting minutes, I'm like, wonder what I can sketch there, and usually do.
Yeah.
So I'm.
So Cormac, I'm curious, what kind of things do you sketch in these little tiny little white spots?
I mean, I've been on my little zombie kick the past few, months or whatever. Anything. It all depends on the mood of the meeting. I could sense from one of these client meetings that I was having that the client was really, really ticked off at a contractor, because I'm going to try to, keep this non-specific. But anyway, let's just say they were frustrated with the contractor. Yeah, in general. And I started sketching because she was sitting next to me, and I started sketching, just a person showing lots of anger. And she kind of like glances down at the sketch, and she smiles at me, and she goes, "Yeah, exactly." It's just, whatever the mood in the moment is, I will sketch something. Yeah. But what was it?
So for
I lost my thought.
you're kind of sketching cartoon-ish sort of sketches, not always what many of us probably think as architects. Oh, we're sketching a detail, or we're sketching a little building, or something like that. That's not always what you're sketching.
You know, what's interesting is you would be hard-pressed to flip through the stacks and stacks of sketchbooks that I have and actually find an architectural sketch.
See, most of mine are.
I find it really hard because I use sketching as kind of a mental break from, just like the day-to-day grind of the architectural profession. And it's not that it's a grind and, it's, Calgon take me away kind of moment. It's just I use it as a way to just kind of escape the stuff that I do every day. And so I'll sketch anything, little monsters, my little rag dolls, all these different things. I'll just create little characters, tree scenes and things like that. I'll even do I did a whole series of Post-it notes of landscapes that I saw on vacation one time. So I don't seem to do a lot of architectural sketching. I do a lot of architectural. Let me back up. I do a lot of architectural sketching. It's just at work. I don't seem to devote my personal sketching time to architecture. There are architectural things in there, I don't know if you guys have seen recently my little stilted houses, that are kind of like in the treetops and stuff like that. I do things like that, but no, I don't. I don't seem to draw anything architectural.
See, I draw mostly architectural stuff or things that I'm going to build in my studio workshop, just so I can kind of mentally figure it out roughly before I start. I don't like to figure everything out. I don't like to do CAD drawings of that stuff. I like to just start working on it and see what works and see what doesn't, and kind of let the process take over of working with my hands. But my sketchbook is full of a lot of stuff that's just kind of rough ideas. This is kind of interesting, I think I sketch mostly in Axon. I don't sketch in perspective. I don't do a lot of shading. It's kind of technical drawing in axonometric form because I like to dimension things sometimes, and but I draw mostly in 3D, I would say. I do a lot of elevation studies where I'll do 20 different versions of what the building could look like in elevation on one sheet. So they're all postage stamp size. Just to crank through them as fast as I can and come up with as many ideas as I can. I'll give myself 20 minutes, and how many can I come up with? So I think that that's the kind of stuff you'd find in my sketchbook. It's totally different than what you're talking about.
Well, see, and I like actually that you do that you do these kind of almost timed exercises, because what that does is that kind of mentally forces you to think about it real quick and then move on to the next one. Think about it and move on. And what that does is it kind of just forces you to think, change your perspective just enough to, it may all kind of be a theme and variation of the same thing.
Yeah, it's iterative.
But it's kind of forcing you to look at something and not get stuck on, one specific thing. Because, now to kind of rewind back a little bit to just when I'm actually sketching in the process of design, a lot of times, you can kind of get married to an idea, and to force myself out of doing that, I purposely try to just do these little time sketches of, all right, I'm going to do 20 elevations in 20 minutes, and I'm going to spend 1 minute on these sketches, and you'd be surprised at how many you can really do in 1 minute. But what it does is it kind of forces you to think, not get stuck on something, not fully marry up on an idea, but to detach yourself from a specific idea. And if it works, you kind of continue to develop it through the other iterations of your sketch.
I just keep thinking, what if?
Exactly.
That's what I keep saying over and over in my head.
Exactly, and that's a great tool for anybody who's doing really any kind of sketching. I mean, when I do like my little character sketches, and I'm just trying to come up with like little ideas for a monster or something like that. I'll do a bunch of different like little sketches, and then that was really the intent of that my Post-it notes exercise that I did. Where I was doing one a day. I really kind of started doing it as like a 2-minute sketch. Yeah. It evolved to many more minutes after that, but I mean it was intended because I have a 3x3 piece of paper, and there's really not there's a whole lot of things you can do on 3x3, and there's very limited things you can do on 3x3. So it kind of forces you to think about what you're doing.
Well, I think that's exactly what drives architectural projects a lot of the time is constraints, right? So you're setting up constraints for yourself, within the size of the paper, or maybe the pen or the pencil that you use to do it with, or the amount of time you give yourself. I think all these constraints actually lead to creativity. I mean, there's so many constraints when you actually go to design a building that the general public who ends up experiencing the building never even sees. Fault lines, setbacks, zoning requirements, exiting requirements, all the stuff that we have to deal with that people generally aren't aware of, that are all driving design, go all the way down to these initial ideas where you're creating constraints to drive the process forward. And I think that's a really cool part of this whole creative thing that we do, is that we're constantly developing these little languages that set up a set of rules for us to follow and potentially break at some point if we can justify it or however we want to do that. But I think that's a really neat thing that a lot of people don't realize that architects go through when they're designing.
Well, guys, what about we had a question from a listener come in about this topic, and one of the questions
was that
was Daniel Novick actually sent that in, and he was asking what sort of, if we preferred like pen, pencil, different types of paper, what types of paper, trace paper, and I'm not sure exactly. I think, at least for me, when it comes down to sketching for design, I'm typically doing that on trace paper myself.
Yeah, I love trace too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I wish I had it in my sketchbook so that I could go back and have this record of it.
Right. So I don't know.
Yellow trace or white?
Yellow. Oh, question.
Butter paper.
I've gone back and forth. Okay, well, there's also the two different types of yellow, right? You got the real bright yellow,
like the canary,
and then you got the highlighter type, and then the kind of muted yellow.
I like the canary yellow, like the bright yellow.
You like that bright one?
I do, but I usually end up drawing on white because it scans so well.
Yeah, and actually that's interesting that you brought that up, because if I'm just doing some sketches to kind of go through the process, it's typically on yellow trace.
Yeah.
But if I'm trying to hone in on a final sketch that then I'm going to take into Photoshop and, kind of set up the final presentation or something like that, it'll always be on white. And everybody, and people have noticed that I'll switch to, it's like, well, why did you do all these on yellow paper? Why'd you do this one on white? Or why are you doing all these on white? Like, well, because when you scan them, when you scan them black and white,
it's just easier.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot less, you take it in there, and there's a lot less that you have to do to manipulate the page to
saves time.
Yeah, saves a lot of time.
I've never had a problem scanning the kind of the muted yellow colored trace.
But if you're
just haven't had a problem with that.
That's
it
because
scans.
you're Neil Penn.
Oh, shut up! It scans for me. It scans just as well as white.
But
I think it's just when you send an intern to do it, and
oh well.
They don't know what they're doing. They never sketch, so they don't know how to scan.
That's right. Pick on the poor interns.
Yeah.
I will say one thing, and just as a side shot to, I was looking at some sketches from recent interviewees that we've had, and they're just like, oh yeah, this was my thesis, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, really? It was your thesis? You didn't do a finished product or anything? And that is finished. And you're like, okay, sorry, next.
There's a pro interview tip there. Make sure you show your best work.
Well,
and your best work may not be your best work.
Honestly, that should be the case for anybody. I mean, whether you're a seasoned professional,
sure, of course,
Grandpa Neil, or
get off my lawn.
But I mean, I wanted to
get off my drafting table.
Well, before we get too far off a topic,
that's a good T-shirt.
I like that.
Yeah,
that's a T-shirt. There, we should make that.
Yeah, exactly.
Get off my drafting table.
Look for the Archispeak shop coming up soon. No, before we get too far off of topic of, I want to get back to kind of the mechanics of the actual sketchbook, because, Neil, you brought up, what type of, paper and all of this other stuff. And,
pens, pencils,
sketchbooks themselves, it really depends. It honestly depends on what type of utensil you're using.
Okay.
Whether it's pen, and there's different types of pens. Excuse me.
There's a mute button on the mic for that, by the way.
Not on mine.
Yes, there is, actually.
Where?
Right on the front.
There's no button on the front.
Yes, there is.
He's got the mic backwards, Neil.
Oh, my God. No wonder why our audio stinks sometimes. And Evan has to work so hard.
The only thing on the front of this mic is the friggin' light and the word blue.
And if you tap that light, it's a button.
Well,
Cormac, go ahead and say something and push the button for the rest of the podcast.
Sorry, listeners. Thanks. Just a little
nice.
sidebar education for future our future competition podcasts.
Oh, just to let you know, it doesn't mute.
It'll mute.
I didn't hear anything.
It doesn't, because I wasn't saying anything. I was acting like a little monkey tapping on the light. It doesn't move. It's just a light.
Okay, all right. I may stand corrected. Anyway, you're talking about pencils. Pencil.
He was talking about paper.
I
was talking. Well, it's got to be a combination of what you're sketching. I'll use, if I'm using a fountain pen, I want a smoother paper, but I want a thicker paper because
it bleeds. Yeah.
Well, not necessarily because of the nib, but when you're laying down ink with a fountain pen, it's laying down a heavier line of ink.
Yeah.
And it absorbs through there. And, we can talk about grains and stuff too, because I have this weird abhorrence to bleeding of ink. And, and the type of paper, the type of ink, the type of nib, and all this other stuff, if I'm using, because I'll sketch a lot with my fountain pens. Love fountain pens, use fountain pens often, and I'll sketch with my fountain pens. But, if I'm doing finished sketches and stuff like that, I switch to microns. If I'm doing rough sketches, it'll be a pencil of either a red pencil, blue pencil, or just a normal pencil. In almost all of those, I use a smooth paper. I don't necessarily, like if I'm sketching and I plan on doing a watercolor, obviously it's going to be watercolor paper. But other than that, almost everything that I do is a hard pressed paper, which is the paper lingo for hard, just a smooth faced paper. And normally I use a 90-pound paper because it's a lot thicker. You can lay down some really heavy lines and you don't get bleed through. The only problem is that I haven't met a paper that you can use markers and it doesn't bleed through. They have bleed proof papers. They're not bleed proof. It's either that or I'm using them wrong. because my chart pack markers, they bleed through anything.
Yeah. I've been using those a lot lately, and man, they smell good.
Oh, yeah. Chart pack markers.
That's what I like about using trace, is because I like to color on the back with chart pack. Yeah. And it makes a really nice color quality on the front when you do that.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
So I tend to like the thin papers because I layer stuff up heavy. I use lots and lots of layers. I'm constantly scaring people in my studio, ripping the off the roll of trace. And I feel like, that process to me is as important as sketching itself, is the ability to layer. So I'm constantly layering, taking a couple layers off, going back a few steps, starting over. And that's where I think the digital sketchbook stuff really falls apart. Using the iPad. And,
yes.
Some of these apps, they allow you to use layers, but even like Morpholio Trace, it'll let you go back 2 layers max. Well, what if I need to go back 5? Then you're screwed, So that's where I really feel like Trace paper, the rolls themselves, have a huge advantage in the studio. If you're out traveling around and you want to sketch something, that's great for a sketchbook. But I really feel like Trace is where it's at for me when I'm working on design. And for me, I'd like to get into the pens and pencils talk a little bit here, but I almost always draw with a pen. I hardly ever use a pencil or a lead holder.
Before my podcast went defunct because the website that I was using disappeared, I wrote, numerous little posts about different pens, analyzing the I even analyzed the pigment liners, the microns and things like that.
You are a super nerd.
Wow.
Here. This is awesome.
I love, yeah, we can get off on the tangent of pens too, because pens, pencils, hell, ask Neil. I was texting him while I was in the store. I was, about styluses. And so I was reading this, we're talking about digital. I was reading these all these different links talking about, like the Wacom Bamboo, and how, it was like the highest rated stylus for, if you're doing like sketching and things like that on the iPad or whatever tablet. And so I bought it, and it was the thing sucked. The thing that, it just didn't seem like I could, where I was pointing the stylus and where the line was occurring wasn't necessarily the same thing.
Yeah, right.
And I don't know if we're ever really going to get to the point where,
sure, we
and there are like the Wacom Cintiq, these big, huge, monstrous, sketching tablets that real professional artists use. Those are perfectly intuitive. I've got the little Wacom, what's this thing called? The Bamboo pad, the one that you can't see what you're doing. And the stylus itself, I like the stylus, but I am so disconnected from my drawing that I really can't work it very well. I mean, I'm not practicing on it, because it just doesn't feel that intuitive to me. So I do like the fact that I can see my sketch on the iPad if I'm doing, digital sketches. But no, I stick with paper and pencil. Now, if we want to, go down the dark and dreary path of pens and pencils and stuff like that, I can go nerd them on that one.
Do you have a favorite, Neil?
No, I don't want to ruin everybody's parade here.
Well, you're going to represent 50% of the audience who's already turned this episode off.
Okay, fair enough. No, it's just that, kind of going back to the beginning when, Cormac, you said left-handers, I'm left-handed, and I have a really hard time sketching in a book. I can't do it. I've tried, I had, when I was in college, I've mentioned on the show before, we had a professor that used to get us all together in the afternoon in design lab and make us do different sketches, slideshows that we were being shown. And, I was able to, I managed, but it was just difficult. It's uncomfortable. It's to the point where, instead of trying to find the solution, I've tried different sizes, smaller books. I've tried 8.5 by 11 books. Like you, Cormac, I'm not a fan of the spiral bound. I can't even write in a spiral bound notebook. I just have a really hard time trying to sketch in a book. So, and I'm not a cartoonist. I just can't. I can't draw like you can, Cormac. I mean, what you do is amazing, and
thanks.
Let's just say, not that I probably can't do it. I just don't. I don't have. That's not where my interests lie. So I just don't spend a lot of time doing it. So I don't have that, collection of the Moleskine books or or other types of sketchbooks that I have. I have a few, and they probably get a third of the way through. I think maybe one sketchbook when I was over in Italy for a year. I constantly sketched in that one, and I think I probably made it most of the way through. But I get started, and then I can't keep up because it's just something unnatural and uncomfortable. Yeah. So it's just not what I want to do. But and I've used markers, I've used different pens, I've used pencil. I love drawing in pencil, actually. That's probably one of my favorites. And but like you mentioned earlier, Cormac, those lefties here in the audience are very familiar with their left hand just being coated with graphite.
All the time.
All the time. And that leads to another thing, is I can't even take notes on my iPad because my hand just, the way I write, it goes right across the screen, and I've tried like 4 different notepad apps, and I haven't found one yet. I even bought and we were going to eventually get into this too, but I bought one type of drawing utensil for an iPad, and I just can't. I gave up. It became useless to me. So I find it really hard to find the right type of sketching tool and and medium to use. That being said, when it comes to sketching for design or something, I break out the trace paper, and I'll use the trace paper for that. But I don't really have. I enjoy listening to you talk about how you do it and what you're doing and all that. But man, I can't. I have a hard time with that.
Yeah, I've got a new stylus that I'm trying out on the iPad because I found that app that you guys I showed you that I really like called Sketches.
Oh
because
yeah,
the watercolor in that is beautiful.
It hands down has become my favorite of all of them. And I was going to suggest maybe we talk about some of the sketching apps out there, and go through some of those at the end of the show or something. But I mean, we could talk about them now. I mean that the Sketches app. I like that, like the pencil, and when you're drawing with the pencil and stuff.
With the fine, the fine setting is really nice.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it works. I mean, I just really like the way that it is very intuitive or it just it looks and feels like I'm sketching.
Yeah.
I honestly. I've tried a bunch of different styluses and I've taken them all back, and although the nib is really wide, so I can't, control the fine lines or anything, but I just went over to Office Depot and bought a cheap Targus $10 stylus. It's hard metal with the rubber nib, and it actually works great for me.
I just got the Cosmonaut, which it's not $10. I think it was 20, 25. It's like a big fat black crayon, but the tip isn't too big. And I really like it. It's really cool. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. You can get it on Amazon. But I like it because it's a small company. It's made in the U.S. It's just really nice quality, and I like to support the design studios, the small design studios out there, and this is one of them. But it's really cool. It's got a little bit of an air gap between the tip and the solid aluminum core. Mm-hmm. So it has a little give to it.
Right.
But it's not too much. That's what I found with a lot of those rubber tip stylus is that there's too much airspace in there, and the thing flattens out like a flat tire on the iPad, and I hate that. The other stylus that I had for a long time was the Jot Pro, which is a very fine point. It has a little plastic disc on the end that kind of goes any angle you want.
Yeah.
But I actually scratched the screen on my iPad with that once because I must have had a little speck of dirt caught in between. And you could actually see a word that I wrote forever etched into the glass of one of my iPads. And it was like, I complained about it. They sent me some new discs, but they can't really do anything. It wasn't when they pointed out, they're like, well, you got to watch out for dirt. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, I guess I do. But that just kind of sucked. That was a big bummer. So I moved on. And I guess what it comes down to is I don't do a lot of sketching on the iPad, except for, and I've been meaning to do a blog post about this, but I did a blog post where I was part of a Google Hangout on presentations. I wanted to do another one on more presentation techniques because I found using that Sketches app with the watercolors and a stylus on the iPad is awesome when you are presenting in front of somebody doing live sketching because you can project it. Everybody gets to see it. They get to be a part of it. They get to experience kind of the magic of sketching right in front of them. And it's like super interactive, people are yelling stuff out. What about this? What about that? And you're kind of sketching it right there, putting their ideas into a sketch. And that is super powerful. It's an awesome thing. And so I found that when I do sketch on an iPad, it's usually in a situation like that. But if I'm sketching for myself, it's either going to be on Trace or in a Moleskine.
Right. Now I'm flipping through my iPad right now, looking at. I've got several different sketch apps. From the Paint.
Yeah, me too.
The Paint Sparkle app for my daughter.
Sparkle ponies.
Hey, and she's made plenty of those. I do like the line of sketchbook apps that Autodesk has come out with. Sketchbook Pro, Sketchbooks, Sketchbook X, or
Sketchbook Ink
Express,
too.
and then Sketchbook Ink. You had mentioned that one to me, and I like that one. I also got the Paper app by 53.
Yeah. And they just came out with a new stylus that looks amazing.
As much as everybody's been raving about the Paper app, and I like the fact that, I like the interface of it, and, you're scrolling through it and everything. But for me, some of the actual tools that, the sketching tools and everything,
there's not enough control.
It doesn't seem to have much control. And so,
if they would combine forces with Sketches and get all of that cool organizational stuff that they have up front,
agreed,
with the tools that Sketches have, man, that would just be it.
Oh yeah,
that would be awesome.
And then I really like the layers. Because if I come in very much like if I would sketch in my own sketchbook, I come in and I'll lay out some light pencil marks of exactly what I'm trying to draw. And then I want to build on top of that with ink or watercolors or things like that. I like the fact that I can, go in and kind of control it with the layers,
Right.
A little bit different than what, I normally do in a sketchbook, but it's, something that I can, that seems more intuitive to me, that is kind of a similar direct translation to what I normally do on the analog sketchbook versus the digital sketching. And I you're right. I mean, I'm glad you showed it to me because it has hands down become my favorite app.
Yeah.
In fact, I think it's probably the most used app other than my my son playing Minecraft.
That's another form of sketching.
Yeah, exactly.
Big blocky sketching. So I always use a pen. I'm almost 100% using a pen. I do have a lead holder that I love that's in my bag of pens and pencils, and I have a mechanical pencil in there too. But I almost am always using just like a Pilot Razor Point. I like the Razor Point 2.
Mm-hmm.
I like a real fine pen, and then I like to use a sign pen also because I like just a standard Pentel sign pen. I sometimes even take an X-Acto to the tip and cut it at an angle so I can get an even fatter line than I want. But those two pens for me kind of cover the gamut of the widths and that I'm used to drawing with, and it's hardly ever pencil. I usually only use a pencil, like you said, to lay down some light marks up front, and then I go from there with a pen.
Well, I tend to draw more. I'll the Carmine red pencil,
Mm-hmm.
standard issue red pencil that you find in any architect's office. It is one that I sketch the most with. I'll lay down a lot of detail with the red pencil, and then go over the top of it with ink. And I have gone through a variety of different types of pigment liners to try to find the right one. And to me, it all comes down to the ink. And I've gone through trying to find the most comfortable pen, because if you look at the way that, the pen's kind of cut off at the nib and stuff, and you've got harder edges, and, being the way that I draw, it's kind of driving into your finger and stuff. And, I draw for a long time. I could go several hours at a time, just constant straight drawing. And, your hand and your fingers and your back and everything else gets tired, but, a lot of toll on my fingers. So I try to find a comfortable pen, but when it comes right down to it, the thing that I look for the most is the quality of the ink.
Mm-hmm.
And I always go back to the Micron.
See, I just can't stand the way it scratches across the page.
Really?
Because of that metal tip. Yeah.
Well, you gotta draw a little bit lighter. In fact, actually,
I guess. I don't know.
It's actually funny because I used to draw really heavy. And when I started to draw a lot more, and I think it happened when I was doing the started doing the posted sketches. I started using my fountain pens, and I noticed that I was drawing so heavily that I was messing up the nibs.
Yeah.
And so then I switched to the Microns because, they were replaceable. And I was going through and I was kind of destroying the tip. The felt tip would, bend and all this other stuff. So I got to the point where I started lightening it up. And I actually found that I could control the pen and the amount of ink and the detail and everything by just lightening up my grasp with the Microns. Then I could really, and it kind of actually translated to all of my other pens too. But I almost developed a completely new technique of drawing just by holding and pressing down a lot lighter.
Yeah. See, I don't think I press very hard, but it's all, for me, it's all about how it feels on the page. It's not as much about ink quality; it's about how it actually feels. And so I'm really sensitive to that, I guess. I don't know. It's weird.
No, I mean
I agree, it's weird.
Well, no, I mean everybody's got their peculiarities of how they draw and what they prefer and all that other stuff. So, I mean, you can ask, go down the list of any artist or any architect or something, and they probably will all have a different view on what they look for in a pen or what they look for in a pencil or what they look for in paper. And I hate bleeding of the line. I hate bleed throughs and stuff like that. So that's why I always draw on a really heavy paper rather than thinner paper. I mean, I've got a variety of different types of moleskin, moleskin books, and I've got the thin paper, and I've got the really thick paper, and I prefer the thicker paper, the 90-pound paper, over the thinner paper because I don't get bleed through.
Yeah.
And
see, I write a lot in my notebooks. I probably have more writing than I do sketching, and I find that I usually write with my fountain pen, and that has a lot of bleed to it.
Yeah.
And I don't mind. But again, it comes down to how it feels on the paper. So I usually go with the thinner paper because it's a little smoother, right? So you'd probably find more writing in my notebook than you would sketching, which is kind of weird.
See, and I find that, just the opposite. When you said that you find the thinner paper smoother, the thicker paper and the moleskin sketchbook, to me, almost has a sheen to it, and it, to me, to me, it seems like a much smoother paper. I mean, almost like a flaw-free type, paper. I mean, it just, you have like the bumps of a hot-pressed watercolor paper versus a cold-pressed watercolor paper that's really bumpy. And then, to me, it's almost as smooth as, like the face of an iPad or something. I mean, to me, it seems a lot smoother, and that's why I like it, because the
glass.
Yeah, because the microns glide across it a lot better.
I'll have to try that.
So,
have you guys seen that thing by Wacom called the Inkling, where it's this?
Yes.
It's like the clip thing that clips on the top of your paper, and you have a pen, and they're paired together, right? It's all wireless, and whatever you draw on the paper is getting digitized into like this base unit, and then it'll send that back to the computer. I guess you have to probably plug it in or whatever, but it sends your sketches, and it's all, from what I understand, this came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But it's all vector, so you can actually edit this stuff in Illustrator.
Really?
And you can tap the base unit. There's a button on it or something. You tap it, and every time you tap it, it creates a new layer.
Really? See, I like that.
It sounds pretty cool. I never bought one to try it out. But the killer thing for me was that the pen is a ballpoint. And I was like, what? You got to be kidding me.
Now, I will say one thing that I absolutely love, and I discovered this, I don't know, several years ago. Fountain pen that I had ran out of ink and couldn't afford or couldn't find any replacement ink, so I just grabbed a cheap ballpoint pen, but it was a fine tip. It was like an extra fine tip pen.
Yeah.
And I started drawing with it, and I really liked what I could do with it. And I've got, a variety of different ballpoint pens that I use. I've got a variety of different microns. I've got a variety of different fountain pens that I use to, sketch with or draw with or write with. So I've got, like this arsenal of pens and stuff. The problem is that I can't find a bag big enough to carry all of the stuff that I have and actually fit a sketchbook in there.
You're not a pen snob. You're a pen hoarder.
Yeah. I'm sitting here at my drafting table while we're recording, and I've got I've got 8 pen cups. Just like little pen holder, like cups or, whatever, filled completely.
Cormac, you have a problem.
It's like Toy Story at night. They all come alive. They do all the sketching for you, and then you just take all the credit.
But then I have a 4-drawer little, plastic 4-drawer case, and it's completely filled with pens.
Jeez.
Then I have 2 little snap top containers. The little small ones, probably about 5 inches wide, 10 inches long, and about 5 inches deep, filled with pens.
Jeez.
And that's
where did you steal all those pens from?
And that's not including any of the. I've got several boxes of Prismacolor pencils. I've got 2 little kind of like baskets of Chart Pack markers, and then the other one is Prismacolor markers.
Damn.
A lot of that stuff came from a firm that I worked for. They were they had a whole bunch of stuff and these are old, I've got really old markers, but they
went digital one day and they said, take all this analog crap out of here.
They did. Now, the only thing that I wish that I would have taken care of and didn't was if I would have kept, because they gave me a whole boatload of rapidograph pens.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, I probably wouldn't be drawing with microns if I would have taken care of my rapidographs.
Yeah, I still have my set from college somewhere. I'm sure they're a mess.
I'll give you my address. You can send them to me.
Do you rebuild?
Actually, I've got a bunch of replacement nibs, but I don't have the
nice.
pens. And I go there and I look at the art stores and they still sell them. They sell them at Michael's. They sell them all over the place. And I just, for some reason, I can't seem to bring myself to buying a set. And they're not that
find some at a garage sale one day.
Yeah. I'm hoping somebody free cycles one.
There you go. All right. Well, that sounds like a good place to stop. What do you think, Neil? You haven't said a word.
I've been rapid. You're going to have to take out all of my typing that you're probably going to pick up in the recording, because I have been trying to rapidly go through and note every single thing you've said and grab a link for it.
Well, that's something we should say real quick, is that you can find the show notes if you go to archispeakpodcast.com/episode/22, right? That's the episode we're on?
Yes.
And on the right side of every page on the site, you could also sign up and just have the show notes delivered to your mailbox the day that the show goes live if you don't want to go to the site.
And you will want this one, because I will be busy writing lots and lots of links for this show.
Lots of good stuff.
So with that, if you have any questions or comments, please visit the website at archispeakpodcast.com. And there you'll find links to the Archispeak Podcast Twitter account, our individual Twitter accounts, and the Archispeak Facebook page. We also enjoy hearing from our listeners as well, so please call and leave a message at 415-484-8496, and don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes.
And let us know what your favorite arsenal of sketching utensils are. What's your favorite sketchbook? What's your favorite pen or pencil? Let us know.
Tweet us. Get us on Twitter. And to those of you who are still listening, we hope you had a nice Thanksgiving by the time this goes live. If you celebrate, have a good one.
Absolutely.
And since I promised for no football talk, War Eagle.
Wah, wah. All right, guys. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Bye.